If you lived in any other first world country, you would have the freedom of knowing that you will not become financially ruined the next time you have a medical problem. We all are just one accident away from that possibility. How do those countries do it? They even pay half of what we do per person each year to cover everyone. We often hear, why doesn't someone do something about this? Wait. Maine Care is doing something. We're a group of caring individuals, including many healthcare professionals, who know that Canada in the 60s got there in just 6 years, after one province passed such legislation and others followed. Okay, maybe we'll just have to do this state by state. Maine is a great place to start. We care about our neighbors and help whenever we can. Numerous small businesses all over the state are crying out for relief from the worry of health-related costs. How can savings be found? Take the profiteering out of the healthcare business. Provide preventative as well as critical care. Negotiate for better priced drugs. No questions asked. No bills at the end. No crippling cost sharing and deductibles. With broad public financing instead of insurance underwriting, we would all chip in a smaller amount than we pay now on average. Pool our efforts and gain that freedom from worry, which we all cherish.
Hi, I'm Chris Maltby and I'm from Sydney in Australia. And just a few thoughts about the Australian public health system, which has been in existence in Australia since the early 1970s in one form or another. And it's composed of three parts. Any service in a public hospital is free, including basic emergency room services and general medical services you can get there. Obviously there's triage and so forth, you might wait a while. Medical services are paid according to a schedule fee that's determined between the government and the medical profession. And doctors receive a percentage of the schedule fee, which is enough for most of them to, or it's designed to be enough for most of them to not have any out-of-pocket for the patient. So essentially if you can visit the doctor for free as well, and that's still a fee-for-service arrangement. So medical tests and other things are all included within that arrangement, again with small changes over the years. And the third part of it is pharmaceuticals, which are also on a scheduled list and are available at a modest cost, $20 or so a prescription with an annual cap. So that means that for chronic illness or acute illness and so forth, you can expect to be treated for nothing or for very low cost anywhere in the system. And and that's all paid for nominally by a small increase on the income tax, which was set up at the time the system was introduced. There's also a parallel private system, which, when various Conservative governments are in office, has been subsidised more or less, and tends to undermine the public system, leading to a more American-style system, as we're told. At the moment, it's becoming less attractive to people because its fees are substantially higher. But you can use the private system to get early access to optional surgery, for example. But generally speaking, anything that's urgent or life-threatening or anything will be treated very promptly and without any out-of-pocket costs. So the system works pretty well. It certainly has resulted, I think, in the national expenditure on health being quite a low proportion of our domestic product, and the services available in our hospitals and from doctors are at the world standard largely. So you'd have to rate it as a success on that basis.
I am living in Antwerp in Belgium. I'm Dani. And I would like to tell you a few words about the healthcare system here in our country. And as far as I know, it is one of the best. Anyway, I read about it and they said it was one of the best. And the story is like this. I would like to tell you a few details. My husband was an American. He was a banjo player and a painter, and he lived in this country since from 1958 till 2000, when he passed away, unfortunately. And in 1995 he had a very bad operation cancer operation, and he had to stay for more than a month in a hospital. And thanks to the healthcare system here in Belgium, we could benefit from the best treatments and at a low cost, which is very important. And my husband was telling me then that if he was still living in the States, he could never have benefit from what he did here. And so he said he was very lucky to be here in Europe. And I have to say also that the healthcare, the first law on healthcare coverage was implemented in Belgium at the beginning of last century. So, you know, it's very important. And when I think about it, I hope that that you will get a universal health coverage, not only in your country, but it should be everywhere, because as far as it goes, I think it's, you know, a basic human right. And so it should be, everybody should benefit from it, all over the world.
My name is Dave McClurg, and I live in Rockland in Maine. 1 year after the National Health Service was introduced in the United Kingdom, I was born in Northern Ireland. And ever since, I have enjoyed free universal health care in Northern Ireland, England, and Scotland. 3 years ago, my wife and I moved to the United States, and 1 year ago, I had my left knee replaced. If I had been in the United Kingdom, that would not have cost me anything. In the United States, I have a job which gives me good health insurance, so I was lucky I did not have to pay the $50,000 it cost. I did have some co-payments, and I was subject to $500 in deductibles. The quality of the treatment here in the US was excellent, and it would have been the same for free treatment in the United Kingdom. Out of my wages in the United Kingdom, I paid a few percent tax, which guaranteed me free cover for whatever I needed, whenever I needed. I have had my gallbladder removed in the United Kingdom, and I have been treated for a severe flu-like virus. And both of these were free and received in good time. In the United States, I have been fortunate to have good health insurance from my employer, but if I were to change or lose my job, I would also lose cover. Currently, from my pay, as all employees do in the US, I pay a small percentage towards the cost of Medicare, and I'll need it. And when I need it, it'll be there for me and for my wife. Medicare is not administered by the government and runs as a single-payer system for all healthcare costs. It has been very successful for the last 50 years. Based on what figures I can find, under Medicare for All, I would pay a tax of about $1,000 per year, as opposed to the $6,000 it currently costs in premiums, co-pays, and deductibles. My employer would save about $10,000 per year, paying $2,500 instead of $12,500. I would not mind paying a small amount of money in tax and not have to worry about losing or changing my job, rather than having a large amount in premiums deducted from my pay, from which I would lose benefit if I lost my job. I am in favour of a universal healthcare system with a single payer, such as an improved Medicare system for all.
Hello, I'm Ann Turifold from Norway, and I would like to say something about the Norwegian health system. I've had a very good experience with this system through to childbirth and breast cancer I had in 2008, and then I was really good followed up, and everything was free, and it went very well after 7 months with the chemotherapy and radiation. And then I decided 4 years later that I would like to have a reconstruction of my breast, and it was totally covered by the health system, and it was a big complicated operation, and everything was covered, and so I'm so happy to live in Norway and to be able to have 2 breasts after breast cancer. So thank you. Bye bye.
Hello, my name is Dr. Larry Kaplan. I'm a neurodevelopmental pediatrician who has been in practice for 40 years with a primary focus on the care of children with chronic illness and special health care needs. This includes children with birth disabilities, genetic disorders, chronic health problems, and major neuromotor disabilities. In my 40 years of practice, I have struggled as a provider to advocate for those children who have the least resources and often the weakest voices to demand and advocate for themselves. I found that many services for children with special needs are controversial in the eyes of insurance companies because they do cost money. But they cost money because they are representative of the needs of those children. The Affordable Care Act attempted, among other things, to put into perspective the needs of that group of children and to emphasize that exceptions are part of the process of exceptionality. By this I mean, if you have a pre-existing condition, it's not the child's fault, not the parent's fault. It's the nature of health. It's the nature of health care. And I was very happy to see the beginnings of a revolution and an evolution of thoughtful, sensitive, and supportive health care for all with the Obama plan. What we have now in the Senate is not only a secretive bill that very few people have even had a chance to really look at, analyze, model, test, examine, but it also is something that's been put together by people who are not experts in healthcare delivery. For all I know, this may actually be the work of senators and congressmen and their staffs, and the odds are that is not a majority of individuals who have put their life efforts into taking care of other children, taking care of children, other adults, but also don't understand the whole notion of healthcare economics. I can only end this with some personal experiences that I'd like to share with you. I have seen parents waiting with a 200-pound wheelchair and a child with oxygen suction equipment on board, waiting for a bus to get to a clinic and hoping that they're going to get to the clinic on time. And when they finally arrive, they're mostly apologetic for being 5 minutes late. This is not the parent who needs another insult or assault on their children's well-being or their well-being as a family. I have seen parents ask how much something is going to cost to have to make a decision whether they're going to pay for that by cutting back on food, transportation, or maybe holding off on a couple of months of rent just to pay what we call co-pays, which is cash basically spent at the front desk when they come to a clinic. I've seen people struggle over those matters. And yet I've seen tremendous resiliency in those children who benefit from the services when they are provided. And almost all of the time, there's a battle and a struggle. That kind of what you get is what you pay for mentality is not in the spirit of an American healthcare system. So I would like to cast my vote for improving on, building on, and getting our Congress to cooperate with one another to add to and improve what Obama himself said would require that bipartisan work for it to succeed. We do not need a bill whose primary goal is to just discredit the Obama administration and disassemble something that had great potential and still does have great potential for making our citizens healthy in this day and age. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
My name's Chris Foster. I was born in England in 1948. That's the same year that the National Health Service was introduced in the UK. Healthcare that's free at the point of use is the only system of healthcare that I've ever known, and it seems completely obvious and normal to me. I've always understood that the healthcare I've received over the years is not free, but that everyone contributes to it according to their means through their taxes. In other words, the community takes care of its members in their time of need, when the last thing they need is to be worried about how to pay for the care that they need. This results in a palpable sense of security and of one's right to health care. My parents' generation told many stories about the bad old days before the health service, and they certainly valued very highly indeed the National Health Service that their generation created and which cared for them to their dying days, and which continues to care for their children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren. In 2004 I moved to Iceland, where I now live. Like all the Scandinavian countries, Iceland also has a national health service funded through taxation. Now, with its small population of just 330,000, Iceland's health service is of course very different from the UK's, which serves a population of over 60 million. There are charges at the point of use here, but these are subsidised. Kids up to the age of 15 or 16 go free. Elderly people, unemployed and disabled people pay less than working adults, who for example pay about $10 for a visit to the family doctor, or a visit to a specialist consultant might cost you between $50 and $80, something like that. However, there's a discount system in place so that once the total you've paid in a given year reaches a threshold of about $250 to $300, the charges for the rest of that year are significantly reduced. Notwithstanding the payments that we have to make here in Iceland, you never hear of anyone getting into serious financial difficulties, such as losing their home or going bankrupt. People here would find that totally unacceptable, cruel even, and immoral, and there are multiple safety nets to prevent that happening. You also never hear of anyone being denied treatment on financial grounds. I simply can't imagine life without a National Health Service. To me, it's the logical and civilised way to deliver good health care to the whole population when they need it. To me, it's simply the most obvious no-brainer.
My name is Sarah McClure. I'm from the United States, from the state of New Hampshire, but I've lived in Great Britain from 1970 until 2014. I've been back in the States for the past 3 years. But during my 46-year stay in Great Britain, I've had extremely good care from the National Health Service in the UK. I've had a number of procedures and operations over those years. I must say that every single one of them, I had excellent care. I never paid a penny for any of the services, any of the operations, any of my doctor's visits, prescriptions, anesthesia. None of that had to be covered. I can compare a situation where I was staying out on one of the Scottish islands, on the island of Rathsay, and I took very sick with a blocked bile duct, and I had to be taken by ambulance from Rathsay across the ferry to Glasgow, to one of the hospitals in Glasgow. I never paid a penny for the ambulance service, but my husband, who is from Ireland and is now living in Rockland, Maine with me, had a procedure done about a year ago where he was taken from Rockland, Maine up to Bangor, Maine, and the ambulance cost him over $1,000. It's very fortunate that he had good coverage with his insurance company through his work. But the comparison is very interesting, whereas I had to pay nothing. There are other situations where I have had to have specialist care in the UK. I had cataract surgery. I never paid a penny for it. I've had prescriptions. I've never had to pay anything for them. And when we moved initially back to the States early in 2014, my husband had a job contracting in the States, and I had IBS and needed treatment, and I could not get Medicare because I'd been out of the country too long and I was no longer qualified for Medicare, even though I'm 77 years of age. So it forced us to go back to Scotland. I got excellent care back in Scotland, and then we had to figure another way to get back to the United States. It cost us a lot of money to go back and then have to return again. And we finally made our final move, and my husband had to get another job which paid good benefits, and we are all right. But if that hadn't happened, we would have had to stay in the UK. So I would just like to reiterate that my care in the United Kingdom has been extraordinary, and I sincerely hope and passionately hope that America will come around to a single-payer system the way so many other progressive countries in the world have done. Thank you very much indeed.
My name is William White, and I'm a healthy senior living in Vancouver, British Columbia. In Canada, we have a national healthcare system which is administered by province or territory. Healthcare costs are covered by our federal and provincial taxes. In the summer of 1996, I had a surgical operation for an aggressive form of prostate cancer. From initial diagnosis by my family doctor, biopsies, to the operation was a matter of a few months. This allowed time for me to save units of my own blood at no cost for use during the operation. Post-surgery, there were home visits by a nurse while recuperating and follow-up visits to the oncology department at the Vancouver General Hospital. There were no financial charges to me for any of these services. I still have regular follow-up blood tests, again at no direct cost, and to date, I'm still cancer-free. I believe that my full recuperation and timely return to work was enhanced by not having the worry of dealing with invoices for medical services. My wife and children have also benefited from our healthcare system. Whenever there was an urgent medical situation, it was dealt with promptly. The benefit of being cared for in a proper and timely manner by our healthcare system has meant that I've had a healthy, productive life, which has been a net benefit to our family and our community. I am vehemently opposed to any attempt to introduce private healthcare or a fee-for-service system which would degrade our universal healthcare system in Canada.
My name is Hanji Chang. I am originally from Taiwan, and I now live in Midcoast, Maine. So I pretty much had healthcare, national healthcare almost my entire life, living in Taiwan. And the system started fairly recently in '95, because the biggest problem we had then, not only people can't afford it, but they really see that rural area, people cannot go to see the doctor. There was not enough hospitals. So that was one of the biggest problems. So when the new party came in, they tried to introduce a new healthcare system, and the ruling parties actually saw that as, right, everyone wants healthcare. It's a nonpartisan issue. So they went ahead and studied the healthcare system all around the world, and they actually found the best one was Medicare from America. And so they just took Medicare and then expanded to everyone. And so the Taiwanese system is based on the American Medicare system. What it costs for us to pay for healthcare is we pay about $20. When I lived in Taiwan, it was $20 a month, and now I believe it's about $22. They raised it a little bit in the past 10 years. And so you pay a monthly $22 fee, and each time you go to see the clinic, it's about $6 to go see the doctor at any clinic you want to see. And that includes medication that comes with the fee you pay to see the clinic, and you don't get a prescription. Every clinic and hospital comes with its own pharmacy. So after you've seen the doctor, they immediately prescribe you the medication you need, and you get it on spot, and that's all paid for in what you just paid for the $6. And I've honestly never ever heard of anyone losing a home or anything paying medical bills. From my own experience, my dad had cancer, and he went through radiation and chemo treatment, and so that was still within the healthcare what you paid for, but it's not. It's more than that $6. But I believe it was like $30 each time he gets his chemo. So it was more, but it was not outrageous, and we couldn't afford it. And he was sick for many years. Unfortunately, my dad died in the end, but we did not have a medical debt to pay because it was so affordable. And I guess the most frustrating thing for me here is nothing's transparent, just in terms of how much I pay for each visit. Last year I had a lab test done in Taiwan, and then it was $6. I had the lab test, and I got the result within 2 days. And when I came back here to see my doctor here, they wanted to run the exact same lab test. So I went to the local, the bigger hospital here to get the lab test done. The result came in more than 2 weeks, and then I didn't know how much it would cost, and it cost me in the end more than $1,500. And it was the same test, same result, and then I got this debt collection agency calling me like 6 months down the road and said I need to pay for an extra $300 from Kansas because they run one of the tests in Kansas, and somehow that I didn't pay for. I didn't know about it, and then when I called the hospital here, they actually didn't know that lab. They said, I don't know which lab that is. They were so confused, and I thought this was just a scam. And I realized that later we sorted out. They did run a test in Kansas, and they just didn't include it in the bill they sent me first. And it was just a whole mess. And I was just thinking I could have done it cheaper and faster if I had just packed up and bought a plane ticket to go back to Taiwan and come back within a week, and I would know everything. Everything's paid for. So that was kind of one of the most frustrating thing for me is, and just like buying anything you can think of, you know the price up front, and why is it so hard to just let us consumers to know what we're gonna be paying for. And as far as how they call us socialists, communist system, the ironic thing is in Taiwan with this system they actually created this free market system for doctors to open up their own clinic. Every single clinic is privately owned. They just follow the system. They get paid, but it's the ultimate free market system. I can see it's more free market than it is here. So yeah, that's kind of my experience with healthcare from Taiwan.
Want to join us? Go to mainallcare.org. Learn more and help us get there. Everybody in, nobody out.